You're listening to Catholic Family Podcast. Episode 10.
Thanks again for joining the Catholic Family Podcast. I'm Kevin Davis. I'm joined again by my mother. We're going to talk about celebrating the liturgical year and the month of February at a glance. And we're going to look at a little bit into the details of the saints of the month and the feasts of the month that people may or may not know, but fun little details that you may not just get from reading the abridged version of Butler's Lives of the Saints. So, Mom, thank you again for joining.
Hi there, Kerry.
And so the best place to start is at the beginning of the month, right? So February 1st is St. Ignatius and St. Bridget. So what's some interesting stuff about these two?
All right, St. Bridget. And I am told that calling her Bridget is incorrect. She's also on the 1st of February, the very first day. Her name is actually pronounced Brigid or Briad, I guess in Gaelic. Mm-hmm. But I can't do that. It's Bridget to me. And she's also called St. Bride or Bridie. And she's also called Mary the Gael. So the Gaelic Mary or daughter of Mary. So she's got a lot of nicknames. There are 3,000 holy wells in Ireland, and probably a quarter of them are called St. Bridget's Well. Apparently there's a bazillion St. Bridget's Wells. And you know, the holy wells are exactly what you think they are. They're considered to have been blessed by that saint or have some connection with that saint. And the one that's closest to her abbey in Kildare, there's a legend. And I don't know how deeply we can consider this an actual miracle, but at least the legend. I don't know if you know that she brewed beer. She was well known for the quality of her beer that she brewed. And she was actually a really, really intelligent woman, too. She also knew a lot about metallurgy, metal, refining metal. So she was a crazy Renaissance type woman. But the holy well near her monastery, apparently, or near her convent, she apparently turned the well water into beer. So
she is my new favorite saint.
I know, right? I know. Who knew that? I had never heard that story before. Interesting thing too is that you get, when you go to the holy wells, what you're supposed to do is you get a little piece of fabric. And I don't know if they're supplied there or not, or if you bring them with you. You dip them in the well, and whatever's hurting you, say you've got a sore throat, you take this piece of fabric, which is called a clootie, Clootie, and you wrap it around whatever hurts. And it's supposed to bless you. So if you ever go to the wells, make sure to bring your clootie with you.
All right.
Oh, here's another really cool one about her. St. Bridget is a fascinating woman. She is like a little firebrand. She went to the King of Leinster and asked him, she went a begging. She asked him for land to build her monastery on. And he was just kind of snide, a little bit, stinking about it. And he said, well, I'll give you some land. I'll give you as much land that you can cover with your cape. And the legend goes that she went out and she laid her cape on the ground. And by a miracle, God made the cape grow and grow and grow and grow until it was big enough to cover the land that they needed for her abbey. So that's another legend of the miracles of St. Bridget. Another one, and this is actually true, absolutely true, that we know for a fact, is that after she died, and she died in 451 or so, they kept the fire burning in the convent in Kildare. She kept the fire burning. She was a little firebrand, and she's often shown with a symbol of fire. They kept the fire burning from the date of her death, which was around 525, until 1220. It never went out.
Wow.
Never. And 1220, something happened and it went out. And I can imagine that there's a story about that, but I don't know what it is. And they relit it, and it burned for 400 more years until at the time of the Protestant Reformation. Yeah, guess what? They came in and, wrecked that up. But yeah, anyway, St. Bridget, she's a fascinatingly.
And was she a contemporary of St. Patrick? Or around the same time, right? Because he was mid 400s.
Yeah, but she is as famous as St. Patrick is. She was the actual first native-born Irish saint.
Okay.
So that distinguishes her from St. Patrick.
Interesting.
So that's a whole lot going on February 1st. February 2nd, of course, is Candlemas Day, also known as the Purification. That's when Our Lady went to the temple. It was a custom at the time of Christ that you went after 40 days and you were purified in the temple. And it was like you're coming out. You and the baby came out into the world after that. And now a lot of women don't know that you can go and get a special blessing just like that too. After it's called churching, that women can go after the baby is born and have a special blessing that's called churching. And a lot of women don't know. Ask your priest. It's like, trust me, brand new baby at home, you need it. Get those blessings. But ask about that. And it's also the fourth joyful mystery, the presentation. This is all Candlemas Day. So you're thinking about the presentation and you're thinking about St. Joseph and the Blessed Mother and baby Jesus meeting with Anna and Simeon. And the reason it's called Candlemas Day is because of the quote. Let's see, Simeon says, now dismiss thy servant, O Lord, in peace according to thy word. For my own eyes hath seen thy salvation, which thou hast prepared in thy sight, in the sight of all peoples, a light to reveal thee to the nations and glory of all the people of Israel. So that light is where we get Candlemas Day, the idea of the light. And one of the four chief blessings of the church. Four chief blessings of the church. Okay, Kevy, my old student, my pal. Do you know what the four chief blessings of the church are? We did study this back in the day.
Oh, chief blessings, like days where they bless different things?
Important sacramentals, generally speaking.
Oh, boy. I would guess, is it St. John's wine?
No.
Oh, boy.
That's a big one, but it's not one that's, done everywhere. It must be done. All right, think about middle of Lent. No, before Lent, excuse me.
Oh, ashes. Okay, yeah.
Well, ashes,
ashes, palms.
And palms. And candles on Candlemas Day. And one more big one. This is also in Lent.
When you, on Good Friday, no.
You're close, though. Think of Saturday morning. Think of Holy Saturday. I think it's morning. No, it's evening.
I guess you get candles again.
Yeah, but blessing of the holy water.
Ah, okay. Okay, yeah.
The holy water. So those are the four chief ones. Palms, ashes. No, 5. Palms, ashes, holy water. No, candles. I can't count. Palms, ashes, holy waters, and candles. There are 4 chief blessings of the church.
All right.
But cool. Yeah, so there's that. Let's see. And then, of course, all the good things that you use those candles for. Yeah, the good thing to do that. If you haven't ordered them now, you better scurry or see if you've got them in your gift shop in your church, because that's coming up like in a few days. What day? Tuesday is the 2nd?
Tuesday is the 2nd, yeah.
It's the 2nd, right? And then you want those candles on hand for extreme unction. They go with your extreme unction kit. You can use them on dusk on All Saints Day, and especially in storms, things like that. When you do the blessing of the fields on Rogation days, we've done that before, remember? Mm-hmm. You use your candles with you for that too. And here's a really cool thing, though. This is super cool. All right, so do you know that Candlemas Day is the original Groundhog Day before the whole groundhog got involved? Candlemas Day was the Groundhog Day. And here's the poem that goes with it. And this goes back to medieval times. If Candlemas be fair and bright, winter has another flight. If Candlemas brings clouds and rain, winter will not come again. So, when you wake up in the morning, there's no groundhog involved. Yeah, so pay attention.
Yeah,
right. Anyway, so there's Candlemas Day. February 3rd. See, we're going to have to move fast. We're going to get through the whole month of this, right? February 3rd, of course, is St. Blaise. And we know that he's for blessing throats and throat ailments. He's the patron saint of throat ailments. He's the saint of the 3rd century. Can you guess where he was from? It's always interesting to me because it's like, okay, well, you know this saint really well. But if you asked me what country he lived in, I would have been like, I don't know.
Blaise. I'll take a guess and say Greece.
You're kind of close. Armenia.
Oh, okay.
He was from Sebast.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he was from Sebast, Armenia. And he was a he was a bishop. Was he a bishop or a priest? I didn't write that down. But anyway, we know he was clergy. One of the 14 Holy Helpers. And you know why the 14 Holy Helpers, about the time they became so famous, was for the plague. So any 14 Holy Helper would be a really good one to pray to right now.
Right.
But he's not only, he's the patron saint of animals and vets, of builders, of wool workers, stone cutters, of infants, and obviously of choking. We know about that. Oh, here's an interesting thing, too. His relics were being translated. You know, that happens very often when somebody actually is canonized. They find their relics and then they get moved to a special church here or there. Okay. You've heard of it happening before. Well, his relics were one of the ones that had a little detour in their trip. And God said, no. I don't like where you're taking these relics. So they ended up there in a ship on their way to, I don't know where they're going, somewhere in Italy, but they were shipwrecked. And the relics ended up being saved by the people of the town and were brought into their church and were allowed to be kept in, I don't know how to pronounce this, Maiorem, Italy, because the people were heroic in saving the relics. They got to keep the relics there. And then they're still there today. You can go see the relics of St. Blaise. And I think Maiorem, Italy is how you pronounce it. Okay. But yeah, St. Blaise. And then St. Agatha is another one, and she's on the 5th. Skip a day. I'm not going to get every day. St. Agatha is on the 5th. She was one of the patronesses and the models of purity, just like St. Agnes. And she's also, you probably would, immediately her name should go. You get a little bell ringing because she's one of the saints in the canon of the Mass, one of the few women that's actually in the Mass. She died in around 231 AD near Palermo, Sicily, and she is a big saint in Palermo and in Sicily. She's very, very popular there. They have a huge celebration between the 3rd and the 5th in Palermo, and Catania, Sicily is the actual town where I think she was from. And there's a huge procession where her relics are processed throughout the town in this big silver chariot. And there's a big candle ceremony. And if you're ever going to Catania, you should go on this date to see this, because that would be, I think, incredibly cool. But so she's one of the great saints of purity again. Then I'm going to skip up to February 11th, and you should know whose feast day that is. You better know. My computer just froze.
11th.
I just skipped. Feast of my special.
Marian. St. Bernadette, Our Lady of Lourdes.
Our Lady of Lourdes, yeah. February 11th is Our Lady of Lourdes. And I could talk for an hour about Our Lady of Lourdes. So I'm going to have to, shorten it up here. The site in Lourdes, the grotto area, and the big church, there's a horrible bug of a church if you ever go visit. And I haven't, but I've seen all the pictures. You don't want to go to the horrible bug of a church. You want to go to the original beautiful church. But the whole site, and I thought this was interesting, the nickname for it amongst the people who live there is called the Domain, which I thought was really interesting. The Domain, they call it the Domain. It's interesting that since 1860, 200 million pilgrims and more probably have visited Lourdes. It is the most visited pilgrimage site in the Christian world, probably of almost anything other than, maybe Mecca. I don't know. But here's another really interesting thing. Of the approved miracles, there actually have been approved by the church. And there are only 67. There are thousands of claims, but there are only 67 miracles that have been approved by the church from the Lourdes waters. And 63 of these 67 was before 1965. After that, you have a handful. And of these 63 that were before 1965, 47 were before 1950. So, I mean, take that, extrapolate.
Right. Well, and they say that it's really been commercialized, I think, and it's become, it's much more of a tourist destination than a in a pilgrimage destination. I think that's really sad. And I have to mention too that I was lucky enough 2 summers ago to go to Nevers, where the incorruptible body of Saint Bernadette is, and she's definitely one of my favorite saints. Partly because I got to see her, which is really an indescribable experience, but also because I've always liked. You can see pictures of her, and there's just something in her eyes that I always like. I think she looks like she has a little bit of this fire or spunk in her that I think that was really makes her one of my more favorite saints. That she was this very imperfect girl, but she still worked and perfected herself, and obviously loved God and loved Mary enough to become a saint and an incorruptible.
Oh yeah, I love her. She was a little firebrand. She's another one, but she was very humble, but she also didn't take garbage. One of her favorite quotes that I love, I see if I can think of how it's actually put. It's I'm not here to debate but to inform, is one of my favorite little lines. It's very handy sometimes, but yeah, she's awesome. We just love her. But yeah, there's so many things that you could say about Saint Bernadette, but I'm going to move on to the 10th. Comes up Saint Scholastica, who is the famous twin of Saint Benedict, of course. She was born in Umbria around 480, and she died in Monte Cassino in 543. So she lived pretty long for those days. So that's, in her just about 60. She's the patron saint of, obviously, Benedictine women and of schools in general, of books and reading. And we all know the story of her and Saint Benedict. You remember the story, how she didn't want him to leave, and they weren't supposed to stay after dark. It was a good rule of the time. And he was a guy, and he was at the convent, and he didn't want to leave. She didn't want him to leave. So she said a little prayer, and God made this big, huge storm and kept him there. So they talked all night, obviously, of spiritual things. And then it was the next day or very soon thereafter, she actually died. So it was a last earthly gift of God to Saint Scholastica. But so now it turns around, and she's actually invoked against storms. So that's a good thing to remember about her. And then, of course, on the 14th, we have St. Valentine. I think everybody thinks they know something about St. Valentine, but yeah, not usually. Do you know that there were actually 3 different St. Valentines of the basic same era? And so it's a little bit confusing when you start to look up his history. It's like, wait. Which St. Valentine is which? But the St. Valentine who is on the 14th was born in Terni, Italy. And he died in Rome in the 3rd century. And I don't think we have an exact date. And he was a priest, and some people will say he was a bishop, but I don't know if they actually know for sure. He was obviously during the persecutions, so he was driven out of Rome and took shelter in a cave with a lot of his people just to escape the persecutions for a while. But when they came and got him, he's like, oh, okay. So he went back, and he was a typical martyr and an example of strength for his Christian children, his parishioners. And nobody really knows why he ended up being the saint of courtly love and courtship, and except for the fact that his death happened to fall during the feast time of Lupercalia, which is a pagan feast day of courtly love, that kind of a thing. So it's like, no, we're gonna supersede this, like the church did in its wisdom, and turn it into a saint. So it all got kind of mixed, and it's still mixed together today. But I refuse to just say Valentine's Day. It is Saint Valentine's Day. Thank you very much. One thing that parents might want to know is that he's really good one to pray to for your children's choice of a future spouse. So, you can start right now with Sophie. Just start praying. Saint Valentine.
I always wonder with these saints is like he probably got this fame or this because like you said, because it was on a certain feast day of the pagans. So he just kind of randomly stumbled into being the patron saint of love and stuff. So I just wonder if he's sitting up in heaven and it's like, come on guys, send me something else, just any other petition except for these matchmaking ones. I know that's not the case in heaven, but I just, you have to wonder sometimes these saints sitting next to each other, getting these petitions, just kind of, winking at each other. It's like, oh, yep, here's another one.
Yeah. Well, it's an important one, though.
It is.
Here's the thing. St. Valentine is also the patron saint of epileptics. Who knew? Just curious. So I wonder if there's a connection there, but probably
Love,
not.
epilepsy. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
Same thing.
Afflictions. Anyway, so the 17th, I'm skipping up a little bit here, is the big day. It's Ash Wednesday. And the 16th, let's go back one. 16th is Shrove Tuesday, 17th Ash Wednesday. And of course, you know what Shrove means.
You know what it comes from shriven. Yeah, it's to...
Right. Or to shrive.
To shrive, yeah.
Which means to confess.
Right.
Yeah, or to be confessed, I think is actually what it is, that a priest will shrive you. So you need to go be shriven on the Tuesday before Ash Wednesday, which is, I mean, it's obvious why we do that. But yeah, so then that Shrove Tuesday and Ash Wednesday are actually really ancient practices in the church. They go all the way back to the 10th century that we know of. No, actually, Lent goes back way early, like the earliest Christians. But actual Ash Wednesday, Shrove Tuesday, the way we do it now goes back to the 10th century. And in fact, in 1091, it was Pope Benevento who ordered the local custom of ashes in Rome at that time to be extended to the whole church, because they thought it was, is obviously a very good idea. Kind of puts you in mind, literally, of what's coming up and what your purpose is in Lent. And the ashes on the forehead. And you know why that is? You know why they're on your forehead? Because, your head is called the seat of pride. So I thought that was interesting. Your head is the seat of pride. So that's why ashes on your head. But now this is the really good part, is that originally throughout Western Europe anyways, that they were literally distributed the ashes. So they literally flung them out over the heads of the parishioners like holy water. So they just threw them around. The women were wearing hats, so they were good. But the guys would have gotten ashes in their hair and all that. They literally strew it about the church. Imagine the mess cleaning that up afterwards. But the clergy themselves got the mark of the ashes on their forehead. But maybe for purposes of just it would have taken too long, or I don't know. But they literally would throw it across the church, which, boy, can you imagine that? Our beautiful new carpet in Omaha.
Yeah, right.
And the other thing about ashes that I'm not sure everybody knows, I think most people know, that it's a sacramental that can be received by anybody. I mean, if you've got a friend visiting you that's not Catholic, they can go up for ashes. It's a sacramental, not a sacrament. So then we're in Lent, and I'll bet you don't know that Lent is an Old English word that means, can you guess what it means? I would not have guessed this.
I'm trying to think of I don't think I could guess. No.
Have a clue. It's like, what does Lent mean? We know what Advent means. The word Advent means the coming, preparation. Right. Lent actually means springtime in Old English. Springtime, all it is. It just means springtime. It's like, oh, wow. That was less than I expected. But then, of course, in Latin is quadragesima, which is very obvious what that means.
Right.
Quadragesima 40. In German, though, I looked up German. Do you know what German is?
Festenzeit, oder?
Ah, exactly. Festenzeit. Which means
pastime. Germans are always very literal. So, they don't make up new words. They just say, this is exactly what it is. It's fast time, boys.
I love that about Germans.
Yep.
Anyway, so Lent it's coming fast. Then let's see, the 17th is the flight into Egypt. And, oh gosh, there's so much interesting stuff about this. I see if I can find the site. There is a, just looking at the mileage of how far they would have walked. They probably still had their donkey, but you didn't usually ride the donkey the whole way. Usually you put your baggage on the donkey and you walked. And the Blessed Mother probably would have had a sling, just like we use now, to carry our Lord. And St. Joseph probably would have led the donkey. And hang on, oops. I'm going to tell you some mileage here. Let's see. If I can pull it up, I should have done this ahead of time. So yeah, there's one of the most popular subjects for artists in history. Oh my gosh, you can find some amazing, gorgeous paintings all through art history of the travels into Egypt, and some of them are absolutely gorgeous. So I'm going to read to you about how much the Blessed Mother would have walked in her lifetime. Okay, I'm just going to read it because it's easier. Mary was probably carried to Jerusalem until she reached the age of 3 years old, because every year they would have gone on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem in the Jewish religion. So she would have walked from Nazareth to Jerusalem and back at least once a year from the age of 3 until she may have been about the age of 20. And with Jesus until he would about the age of 20. The one-way mileage was about 120 miles each way, and thus it would have been 240 miles round trip, or 386 kilometers. So Mary walking 240 miles per year from Nazareth to Jerusalem round trip times 17 years was 4,080 miles, or 6,500 kilometers, more than that. So this is roughly the distance of walking from Des Moines, Iowa to Omaha, Nebraska once a year. So after she was conceived of the Holy Spirit, she walked from Nazareth to south of Jerusalem, where Elizabeth, her cousin, was pregnant with John the Baptist, 130 miles. She then walked back to Nazareth, 130 miles. Then with St. Joseph, she traveled back to Bethlehem, 130 miles. And during all of this, she was pregnant. So this is 390 miles walking while she was pregnant. So this is roughly the distance between Washington, D.C. and New York City. Walking that far, I can't even imagine. Of course, she was probably used to it. So they probably lived in Bethlehem for about 2 years. And Jesus would have been taken twice to the temple in Jerusalem by Mary and Joseph for the circumcision, and then again for him to be presented at the presentation. So that would have been a total of 25 miles she walked. This is about the distance all the way across Denver metro area, if you know how far that is. So when Herod sought to kill Jesus, and the angel appeared and told St. Joseph to gather up Mary and the baby and fly to the desert, and he got him up and did that. So this is how far they would have been. Let's see. The normal mileage from Bethlehem down to the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, through Gaza, across Sinai Desert, into Egypt, to the pyramids, along the Nile, would be about 350 miles. So Mary traveled with the infant baby Jesus at about the age of 2 for 350 miles through a desert. So it's interesting just to know that.
Right.
So then they would have done the traveling back and forth to Jerusalem pretty much every year until they died. This is what they did. I wonder, though, if they would have done it after Jesus's ministry. They probably would have. So the total is Our Lady would have walked 4,080 miles from Nazareth to Jerusalem and returned, 390 miles while she was pregnant with our Lord, 25 miles from Bethlehem to Jerusalem twice, 350 miles from Bethlehem to Egypt, 400 miles from Egypt to Nazareth, 6,000 miles altogether from the time of Jesus at age 5 until 30. 912 miles is estimated during the public ministry of our Lord. So the total that the Blessed Mother would have walked until she was 50 years of age is estimated to have been 12,187 miles. So, the distance Earth is 24,900 miles roughly. So she walked halfway around the world in her lifetime. Interesting, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's interesting too, because I think we always imagine her as this very innocent. I don't want to say weak, obviously, but I think the pictures are always of her very innocent and fragile, exactly. And I don't know if that's exactly how it was. I think obviously she was the most perfect human being aside from our Lord to ever exist, of course, but I don't think that necessarily means she was this, bent shoulders, pale faced woman. I think she must have been very tough and very strong.
Oh, we know it. She had to have been. Yeah, I just picture her making that walk pregnant, just like, oh, my
Right.
Yeah. There's so many reasons to love and respect her. There's just one more. So then, of course, that's the flight into Egypt is on the 17th. And I always think about the long walk in the desert. And then the 21st of February is the first Sunday of Lent. The very first Sunday of Lent is the 21st. And then on the 24th, of course, we have the Ember Wednesday starts. So let's see, Ember Days. You know about Ember Days, right?
I mean, in Lent, it doesn't really matter, right? It's the same.
Lent and Ember Days are almost a moot point. They're kind of a moot point. But you got to remember there, and if for no other reason, then you remember that there are special reasons to pray on Ember Days. I mean, they're specifically for Thanksgiving, for the gifts of nature, for harvest. You're supposed to remember your almsgiving, especially on Ember Days, and actually in Lent too. And the big one is to pray for priests and vocations, pray for our seminarians on Ember Days. So, you just have to remember that extra during Lent. But you know the little cheaty thing about remembering when the Ember Days are, don't you? Do you remember the little mnemonic?
I do not.
No. Lenti, Penti, Cruci, Luci. Lenti, you got the Lenten ones. The first Wednesday is the first. The first is hang on.
Is it the first week of Lent after Ash Wednesday?
First full week.
Yeah.
That Wednesday, right. I'm trying to figure out how to say that. And then Penti is Pentecost. So the first Wednesday after Pentecost. Cruci is the first, the Feast of the Holy Cross is the first Wednesday after the Feast of the Holy Cross. That's Cruci. And then Lucy, feast day of St. Lucy's, the 13th of December. So it's the first Wednesday after St. Lucy. So anyway, Lenti, Penti, Cruci, Lucy. Then when Ember Days are. Right. But, like you said, they are kind of almost a moot point as far as fast and abstinence during Lent. So that's the, what did I just say? 24th. That's the 24th of February. And then the 26th is St. Mechtild, who I confused with St. Hedwig last time. Total slip of the tongue. I do know the difference between the two. St. Mechtild is the saint who's called the Nightingale of Helpta. She's in your part of the world. The mentor of St. Gertrude, one of the great patronesses of music, of organists, and she's pretty awesome. That's the day that you want to get out your special church music and play all your special church music. 27th is St. Gabriel Pacenti, or also known as St. Gabriel of the Sorrowful Mother. He's a great family favorite of ours. He's kind of the young men's little flower. Interesting thing about him is he is the 11th of 13 children, another big, huge family.
So St. Catherine of Siena beats them all. I think she was from 24 kids, right?
Yeah. Right. Several sets of twins in that one. But he's the 11th of 13. He was baptized in the same font as St. Francis of Assisi, which I thought was super cool. Yeah. He was a really normal kid, too. He was just a little flibberty gibbet. Nobody ever thought he'd be a religious. And then he got sick when he was about 14 years old. And I don't know if you've heard about him. He's one of those ones where he's like, I don't want to be. I don't want. And he's like, and then when he got really sick, he's like, he promised, if I'm healed, I will become a religious. And then, afterwards, he kind of just thought, well, it was in a moment of stress. I didn't really mean it. And God's like, oh, yeah. So anyway, so there's so many things happened to him that he sort of realized that God was knocking on his door, not quietly or politely. He had a brother who died. I mean, he had mortality constantly in front of him. I mean, and that time you did anyways, because this was in the mid 1800s. But he had a brother who died. He had another brother who committed suicide. And then at 16, he got sick again. And then he's like, all right. And then he joined. And almost as soon as he joined the Passionist Order, when he was about 17, 18 when he joined, he caught TB and suffered from tuberculosis until he was 24 and was never actually ordained, but is known for his perfect obedience and his simplicity of life. And he didn't jump off the page, but everything he did perfectly, and he is one of very similar to the St. Teresa Little Flower, and he has miracles to attest to his sanctity, and he's just pretty awesome all the way around. And then of course the next day is the 28th, and that is the last day of February, and the 28th is a saint that I didn't even look up, Saint Oswald, but we do know Father Oswald. But and so that is February in a nutshell.
Awesome. Yeah, there's some really interesting info, and definitely a lot more than what you talked about here on your blog, which again, it's a little hard to find, but I think, as you said, if you type into Google, "Are we there yet?"
Colorado blog.
Okay, yeah, then you can find it, because it's kind of a long link. I'll attach the link into the show notes. Tons of information. I mean, we only just barely brushed over any of it. Really, really interesting stuff, and really goes into depth for almost every day of the month. Not quite. I mean, maybe half.
Yeah, not quite. It would have taken me a month.
Yeah, right. But there's a really good note too on the martyrs of Japan, which we didn't talk about in the show. I think that's really interesting. I think a really, really interesting story. I think a fascinating story of the whole Japanese Catholics. I think are really an incredible story of faith that definitely.
And you know what it was that caused them to get so in trouble? It made the persecutions get really ramped up, was because of this. I think it was an Englishman on a ship that wrecked. And now how did that work exactly? Anyway, he just kind of said he was captured, and he told this Japanese nobility that they really should be careful, because they were getting ready to be overrun anyways, and they were going to be colonized anyways. And if you don't believe it, just notice those missionaries over there. That's proof that you're getting ready to be colonized, and you'd better leave me alone and give me back my gold, because you're going to be overrun by it's like, what a ding dong. So then, of course, what was their reaction going to be is going to be to, they really started persecuting then, and they killed most of the missionaries, and then to the people who had already been strongly advised not to be Christian. Of course, they just started to martyr them. But yeah, boy, amazing strength of those people. They had a secret church there for a long time before they were actually allowed to practice again.
Yeah, exactly right. So they didn't have mass for, I think, hundreds of years, but they still passed down the traditions and the prayers of the Catholic faith, and had the faith, even though they didn't have sacraments for their entire lives. I think that's a extreme, and it's not a good situation, but I think it's also a beautiful one in a way that the faith can be extremely simple when it needs to be.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. And then there's a whole mindset that you can keep. But boy, the tenacity of just stubbornness. They're just stubborn people. But theirs is a very fascinating story. But yeah, there are way more saints than we just talked about, and you could just talk forever about them. And there's so many things that you tend to think about the saints as two-dimensional figures, and they're not. They're people.
Totally. Well, and I think that's a good way to end the show, kind of how you started it too, that like you said, Saint Ignatius, he really converted due to reading the lives of the saints. And I had a show with Andy from Ireland a couple of weeks ago about really the same thing. And he said that he really converted and found his faith through reading the lives of the saints and the incorruptibles, and getting this inspiration from real people who gave their lives in one way or another to God. And I think that is really something that we should think of more, to go and buy, saints books and listen online to saints stories, and try to get them, make sure that they are our heroes. They're the ones we aspire to be, not these rock stars or athletes or anything, or against everything we should be trying to do, but go to these saints and learn about them and try to imitate them.
Oh my. Well, and you're not losing any entertainment value by doing that spiritual reading and reading the lives of the saints, because holy moly, they had exciting lives. Oh my goodness. You want to see valor heroism and pathos and amazing turnabouts and so much. They're amazing to read the lives of the saints. That I think that I don't know a priest that I have ever met that didn't always tell you over and over and over again, just do your spiritual reading. And that doesn't mean you have to read, dry tomes. There are so many great lives of the saints out there that it's no sacrifice to read them, not at all. But
yeah, and start young, right? I mean, start when they're kids, and get them to love and respect and making sure that the kids look at them as their heroes.
Oh yeah, good heavens, yeah. Talk about them over the table,
Right.
It's better conversation than talking about politics. Talk about things.
Yeah, for sure.
What are you talking about, kids? Yeah, fill me in. I miss that kind of a thing. My daddy and I talk.
And hopefully that this show and these shows will hopefully continue to do each month, and your blog will help to inspire people that this is not the whole story. Obviously, this is a little tiny piece of it, but hopefully that inspires people that, hey, these are amazing stories and amazing people and amazing feasts, that go out and do your own research and buy some books and do some reading, because it's worth it, and you'll definitely see the growth of your spiritual life and your happiness in general.
Mm-hmm. Oh, true. Yeah, if you ever think you've got it bad, read the lives of the saints. We got
exactly
it.
Right. And again, we Catholics, we are the best when the times are the worst.
Yeah, true. It's good to be inspired.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, Mom, thank you very much again for coming on. I hope again that we can do it in March and for the next coming months here in 2021. And yeah, we'll see you again.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. God bless.
Okay, boss.